Welcome back, rockstars. So today, I'm hoping that you'll help me add to my rock collection. The techniques we're gonna learn in this are solid, and I hope that you take none of them for granted. Alright, so here's the thing. Learning how to do a rock is maybe at the on-site a little boring. You know, rocks are everywhere, it's what our planet's mostly made of. But here's the thing, is that you can either spend your time in the basic stages of drawing, just doing boring spheres and cubes and trying to understand how shading and light works, or you could take these simple exercises of drawing a cube and a sphere, or a circle and a square, and turn them into rocks instead. That's a way funner way to practice the basics. And so you'll notice that I have pretty much every range of color of crayon out, because the thing about today's lessons is not so much about the colors we use, but about the order we go in. Each rock you see up here, besides the geodes, are really only 3 colors, 4 at most, and it's just how we layer them together. And so what I wanted to go over with you before we demo 2 of these rocks is just the basic shapes that I see before I go make the organic shape that you see as an end result. And so I'm gonna pick up my gray crayon and I'm gonna show you 2 shapes that I commonly use, I'd say 80 to 90% of the time when I'm drawing rocks, which is 80 to 90% of the time I'm drawing, to be honest, because you know, nothing's more lonely than working all hard on a character and then having them just sitting there on a white piece of paper. So it always pays off to learn how to draw nature. So here we go. I got my gray crayon because I'm going to do an underdrawing, and then I'm going to go with my black crayon over and show you how over that simple shape I see the more organic rock. So here's a circle. So just your simple classic circle. All right. And I'm going to do a square right beside it. So let's say I wanted to just turn these into 2D rocks. So just like a rock we're just looking right at, we're only seeing one side of it. Well, when it's on top of a perfect circle or a square, the idea is that, well, yeah, that's a really predictable shape, and you're really never going to see anything quite like that, except very rarely in nature. Probably more commonly the circle than the perfect cut cube. So here's what I do. I sort of just go into a meditative mode, and I use that circle as a rough guide, but then I really let loose and go inside or outside of it. Most often, what makes a very successful anything in art is asymmetry. So what that means is both of these, they are exactly the same on both sides, right? They have an even weight. So if I take one side and make it have more volume than the other, it will make for an interesting rock. Not that a symmetrical rock's not interesting, it's just a good practice to get into. So here we go. I'm gonna go over the circle and watch how little I really rehearse. And every time I do this, it'll look different. I flatten on the bottom, you can see. So there's a very interesting shape, almost like a stop sign in a weird way. It has that circle underneath, but no longer does it look like a boring circle. Let's do the square. Same idea. You know, I might do a little layering on top, come down, little angle, cut in, and every time I do that, it's going to be absolutely different. Let's do this exercise again, but let's put on our 3D glasses. This is so that we can see 2 sides of our rocks. So I'm going to again draw a circle and draw a square. Now let me show you what they look like with a little 3D glasses on. So if I was to look at these flat circle and square and turn them into a sphere and a cube, I would want to draw lines from the cube this way back. And all of those you'll notice were parallel. And I connect them with 2 lines that are parallel to the edges of the square that you had drawn those diagonals out from. Very simple. If you've not drawn something like that before, I have earlier lessons where we go over those simple shapes plenty of times over. With the circle, I'm just going to do a slight roundness right at the equator. So Just that roundness implies that now this is a 3D shape. Now, I'm going to go with my black crayon, and I'm going to use the information that I have from these three-dimensional shapes to further get in that meditative trance and draw my rock. So here goes. Circle. Not looking at the top one, I'm just going and riffing, remember? So here we go. See what kind of comes out. Alright, so basically, same as step one, but I separate with, usually in most cases, just one other line. How I make this line is really a reflection of the outline of the rock, because a rock is sort of this repetitive pattern happening over and over again, all the way to the micro scale. And so, if along this curvature, right at that equator, I do something similar to what I had done at the edge, it's gonna look pretty good. So here I go. All right, now as a 2D just line drawing, that looks pretty 3D. So let's do the cube. Same sort of turn the brain off, don't get too over involved. I'm covering the entirety of the cube. Look how it's surrounded within my rock. Now, again, I'll riff off of how I did the edges, and I'll mimic the cube's remaining edges. And there we go. We got a little rock that's in 3D. So, lastly, before we get into actually drawing the rocks, I'm going to show you how I just flow now. And imagine that when you're flowing, you are seeing the circle and the square underneath. Notice how none of these rocks actually resemble a circle or a square or a rectangle. And that's the whole idea. We hide it in there. And so the more you practice with this, the better you'll get at free flowing. Just doing a rock without having that understructure. So here I go. I'll do one based off of a circle, right? There we go. You can kind of see just recently how I did the other one, how I'm inspired by that. So here we go. I'll do that circumference division right there, boom, on the equator. And then let's do one of these cube-like ones. All right. There we go. And then we'll do this guy down here, and a little chip there, and we'll go up there. So look at that. All absolutely different, but all based off of the exact same inspiration. And so, as we jump into the next two rocks, we're gonna do a bluish gray one and this really nice reddish sort of pink one. And so you can do the same colors, or you can choose to really use any colors. Again, it's gonna be more about the order of which we lay the colors down. So let's get going.
So here you see me grabbing my blue crayon. Now, this could have really been any color crayon. As you can see, I have rocks of all different sorts of colors going on here. The most important thing is that we're looking at that last exercise I did where I drew a rock without drawing the simple shape first. And I did that with a nice light color, just sort of what I want the undertone of the rock to be. Now, what you see me doing is using a white crayon, and on the top where the sunlight would hit, I just colored it white. Now what this does is it makes the blue that I'm putting on right now resist that white. What that means is that after I'm done sketching my rock, I can scratch with a quarter, that's what I'll use, at the top of the rock, and take it back down all the way to the white of the paper. So you'll see how that's going to come in real handy. Now notice, on the edge of the rock, that's the side, I colored with a firmer bit of pressure. So now we have a darker blue and a lighter blue. The lighter blue also happens partly just by coloring over the white crayon. Now a lot of the rock leaving this moment is up to improvisation and really trying to get your mind in the space to not be overtly critical of what you're doing. So what I am doing right here is I'm taking my gray and I'm sort of going over the shadow area, and that's just to darken it just a little bit. Now the purple, that's optional. I could have done that with the gray, but here's a little magic trick about purple when it works with colors. It makes the edges round. Now, See how that top edge of the rock still has that light blue? It looks like a different edge than the purple. It's just a cool little trick you can use when you want to round out an edge that's against the sunlight. So anytime, throw some purple under. Or it could have been the gray. We're looking at little details. So, for all intents and purposes, review. I drew the rock, did like kind of a rectangle under shape as what was my inspiration, colored with the white on the top, took the blue crayon or whatever color you wanted, and I colored the top, and then I colored harder on the side. Now I followed it with the gray, the purple for that little edge of the rock, and then you see me going with black. Now, I went pretty firm with the black. You'll find in a moment that it won't be as dark. The whole idea is still to be lighter on the top, darker on the side, but we want to cover up the rock. This is where the fun of the scratching comes out. So right now, I'd say that's a fine rock, it's done. But I really want to show you how you could take it and make it not a black rock. You saw I went for the edge first. A lot of times, it's not a perfect corner on a rock, and so you get this sort of 45-degree angle where the sunlight just bam sparkles right off of it. So that's what I did right there. What you see me doing here is just scratching and not trying to do it like too consistently, almost like a lottery scratcher, like you're rushing to find out if you're the winner today, and you're not too worried about all the little bit of granulates. And that gives the texture to the rock. It's how I layered the crayons. And like I said, it could have been done at that last step. But what I'm doing is showing you how you can really nurture with a very loose technique, a very natural looking rock. And you'll see I get all this dust on there. You can either wipe it off, you can use a brush, a cloth of any sort to get any of those crayon wax grains that are left over. And so, basically right here, we're about to the end of the rock. What you'll see me do is any finishing touches at this point is go in with the black again and put in those deepest shadows. Look how it's the same rock. We still see the top and the side, but there's so much more detail. And all this detail at this point, I didn't know it was going to have any of those cuts in it, that shadow I'm doing right now, that crack. All of it's getting made up on the spot over the top of what I've already done. And that can seem intimidating when you just first start drawing, but it shouldn't be. It should actually be sort of relieving because we built up a whole rock that looked fine first, and then it could only look better from there. So that's the way to think about it. And not that it's, necessarily looking better, but it's looking more like a rock. It's looking more organic. And so we'll cut out that rock, throw it up into the collection, and let's do another one. So this other rock, now I'm gonna go ahead and make it more of like a reddish type of rock. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw the silhouette of it first. This one, I'm imagining somewhat like the circle shape and then distorting it. Look at how I did the asymmetry and I just went for it. That's what I would suggest. And even the bottom, see how I did that little bit coming out the top? I'm imagining that roundness on that sphere. Here, that's just a little bit of extra. And with a rock, they're so natural and so different from one to the next that you could honestly put little dents, shines, anything into it, and it's honestly absolutely excusable if it doesn't make sense, because so often I pick up a rock and it makes no sense to me. And so here I go again with that white. And the importance and why I'm doing two of these is to show you that it's not so much about the colors I'm using. Really what I would suggest is look up rocks on Google and find some different interesting looking rocks, say the grain, the color, the striation. Is it a sedimentary rock, right? Is it just sort of a clump of dirt that's hardened over time? Or is it gonna be sort of a bunch of little pieces, like slate might be all pieced together and sandwiched over time? Is it going to be a combination of different minerals happening, right? And that can always be fun. You can have little specks and stuff in it, like you'll see on that corner rock on the top. Also, one thing I didn't do here is put on like stripes and things like that, odd markings, like that rock right above where I'm doing the example, that could easily had a black stripe on it. Why not? That's how rocks are. Any of these rocks could have had something like that. I could have had a brown dot on that yellow rock and it would have been absolutely fine. What you see me doing here is I did the white in the highlight area and then I followed it with sort of a brown orange. Now I am doing the red in the shadow area. And so the reason I did a brown orange is because the way that color works, especially with a crayon, is I'm always heading towards yellow. So what I mean is that red, orange, yellow, right? Red and yellow, if you mix them together, they make an orange. Now, that brownish color actually a lot of times lives right there in that orange to red area. And so what I did was I used red, and instead of going straight to orange, I went to like a brownish orange so that it just had a little bit more of an earthy tone. You see me following through with the black crayon. You'll notice with different colors, the black will go over it differently, or you'll have different responses, and this is really fun. This is part of exploring any new medium. You'll see there's a lot of cracks and things that I'm adding on the fly, and that's a super important part of this again, is to get into that flow. Look how many rocks I got into drawing. Now, I'm going to get into those geodes on a separate lesson. I just wanted to put them up there to show you what we could work towards, but I'm going to do a lesson where we just go over one geode instead of multiple. But, you know, this will keep you busy until then. Here I go, scratching again, and notice, not consistently, just enough to get interesting patterns and highlights out at the top. So, again, rocks, they may be boring to draw, but heck, if you want to be a serious artist or any artist at all, in art class, they're going to make you draw boring circles and squares, and they're going to say make them 3D, and you're going to have to draw them 3D. Well, why not already take it to the next level? Because never are you going to make a career out of drawing spheres and circles. 1 in a million. I mean, there are some artists that literally they've made their career out of that, but I mean, you gotta really intend that. Most times, it's safe to know how to draw a rock, because you're gonna need it 9 times out of 10 in a situation. You're gonna need some background scenery, and as we started the lesson with, rocks, they're everywhere. Our planet's made of them, so hey, might as well get familiar with them, and they're fun to do. I cut them out afterwards just because they sit nicely on that black background, but think of it this way. Why don't you make your own rock collection? And why don't you take that rock collection and share it with your friends, share it with your family, take a photo of your rock collection, share it to our Facebook, and comment, subscribe on our channel, because I want to show you how to draw those geodes. And once you got a little warmed up on your rocks, I think you're gonna be totally ready. Here I am at that last step. Look how natural this rock looks from just that simple progression of steps. You see me going in there, putting those last little shadows with the black again. Usually I end any rock with scratching if I need it, and black, just to really put in the brightest bright and the darkest dark. Cutting out my rock, adding it to the collection, bada bing, any finishing touches.
Well, thanks for letting me fill. Well, thanks for helping me fill up my rock collection. It has been such a pleasure rocking and rolling with you all. And you know what? You proved to me today, and to yourself, I hope, that you're really solid rock stars. So, hey, please share your drawings of your rocks with me, and click on that little video up there if you'd like to keep the party going. But until then, hey, doodle on.